Welcome back to the Sleepy Poker Masterclass, Beginner to Master. In this 18th lesson, we study how professionals think. Every action in poker fits into a decision tree, a branching structure of possibilities that lead to measurable expectation. You will learn how to trace these paths calmly, evaluate them mathematically, and choose the line that maximizes long-term equity. Chapter 1. The Architecture of Decision Trees. Every poker hand unfolds through structure. Beneath emotion and instinct lies a framework, a decision tree composed of branches that represent every possible choice and outcome. Professionals use this model to understand complexity calmly, tracing the game from action to reaction until each decision connects logically to expected value. A decision tree begins at the root, the moment you face a choice. From there, each option, bet, check, fold or raise, creates new branches. Each branch divides again based on how opponents respond, forming a map of probabilities. Though the full tree is infinite, professionals simplify it into manageable layers, balancing precision with practicality. This structure clarifies that poker is not guessing, but sequencing. Every action carries consequence, altering range composition and future options. Professionals think in terms of pathways rather than moments. When they bet, they already envision possible turns and rivers. When they check, they anticipate how balance shifts in later branches. The beauty of this model is perspective. Decisions that feel chaotic become measurable. Each branch has frequency, probability, and expected outcome. You no longer judge success by emotion, but by structure, the logical flow of the tree. Visualization strengthens this process. Professionals picture the decision tree during play abstractly, not as numbers, but as relationships. Aggression narrows branches, caution widens them. Over time, these visual models become intuition, transforming calculation into rhythm. Emotion distorts structure. Frustration compresses focus, making you fixate on the current node, while forgetting the larger tree. Professionals restore perspective through calm breathing and rhythm awareness, zooming back to see how this decision fits the sequence. Understanding the architecture of decision trees changes how you perceive poker. Each hand becomes a system of interlocking probabilities, a living framework where structure replaces impulse. Mastery begins not with memorization, but with visualization, seeing not just the hand you hold, but the entire forest of decisions surrounding it. Chapter 2. Mapping action sequences. Mapping action sequences means tracing how each decision influences the next. Professionals think in transitions, not snapshots. Every bet size, check or call, reshapes range interaction and determines future expectation. The goal is to maintain logic across streets so that the sequence forms coherent narrative rather than random motion. Each hand begins with a branching point. Pre-flop choices establish foundation. A wide-open range produces many future possibilities. A tight one reduces them. Post-flop, these branches converge or expand, depending on texture. A coordinated board multiplies options, while a dry one simplifies them. Professionals adjust frequencies accordingly, maintaining proportion between simplicity and aggression. Mapping requires anticipation. Before acting, visualize how each option evolves. If you bet now, what hands will continue? If you check, how does your range look on future cards? Professionals internalize these projections through repetition. They play not for the present street, but for the structure of the entire line. Consistency defines coherence. Random aggression may work briefly, but collapses across volume. Professionals ensure that each decision supports previous logic. A line that begins with aggression should contain enough bluffs to stay credible. One that begins passively must retain strength to defend later. Coherence across branches sustains equilibrium. Emotion disrupts mapping. Impulse decisions break narrative flow, forcing reactions instead of progression. Professionals reset pace after mistakes, mentally reorienting the map before the next hand. The process returns order through rhythm. Mathematically, mapping action sequences clarifies expected value. Each node influences EV of future nodes, just as earlier branches influence present options. Seeing these dependencies transforms chaos into clarity. Mapping is not prediction, it is preparation. You cannot control cards, but you can design decisions that remain logical regardless of outcome. Professionals think several branches ahead, yet act in the moment, merging foresight with composure. When the map replaces impulse, poker becomes structure in motion. Each action connects seamlessly to the next, forming a rhythm where logic and patience define every path forward. Chapter 3: Defining Expected Value. Expected value, or EV, is the foundation of poker logic. It represents the average amount you gain or lose from a decision over infinite repetitions. Every call, fold, or bet has a measurable expectation. Professionals focus not on results but on EV, trusting that correct decisions yield long-term profit, regardless of short-term variance. The concept begins with probability. Each outcome, winning, losing, or splitting the pot, carries percentage likelihood. Multiply each outcome by its value, then sum the results. The total forms expected value. If the average number is positive, the action is profitable. If negative, it loses over time. Professionals apply this thinking subconsciously. They no longer calculate manually. They recognize patterns that approximate EV instantly. When facing a river bet, they estimate required win rate by feel. When 3-betting pre-flop, they intuit how much fold equity offsets risk. This blend of logic and rhythm forms real-time decision awareness. Expected value also measures opportunity cost. Folding a marginally profitable hand may prevent future EV from better spots, but overplaying weak holdings burns potential equity. Professionals weigh decisions not by size but by sustainability. Preserving structure ensures higher cumulative EV. Emotion distorts perception. Players celebrate short-term wins, even when EV is negative, or mourn losses from positive EV plays. Professionals detach completely. They judge success by process, not outcome. Correct decisions repeated consistently produce predictable growth. Variance merely obscures timing. Mathematically, EV defines all poker strategy. Game theory optimal play balances actions until every available decision holds neutral expectation. No option can improve without another declining. Exploitative play, by contrast, identifies when opponents' frequencies deviate and shifts EV upward through adjustment. Both systems orbit this single principle, maximizing expected return through proportion. Expected value transforms poker into rational design. You stop asking, "Did I win?" and start asking, "Was it profitable?" Over time, that perspective shift becomes your compass, steady, emotionless, and precise. Chapter 4: Positive versus Negative EV. Every decision falls somewhere along the spectrum between positive and negative expectation. Professionals distinguish them not by outcome, but by logic. Positive EV decisions earn profit over time. Negative EV decisions lose despite occasional success. Understanding this separation preserves clarity when variance disguises truth. Positive EV occurs when the probability-weighted average of potential outcomes exceeds the cost of the action. Calling a bet that wins often enough to cover its price creates gain, even if the current hand loses. Negative EV does the opposite. It feels right emotionally, but fails mathematically. Professionals filter each decision through this framework before emotion interferes. The challenge lies in uncertainty. You never know true probabilities mid-hand. Professionals estimate them through experience, data, and intuition calibrated by volume. Over time, pattern recognition replaces guesswork. They no longer calculate with numbers, they sense ratio naturally. Emotionally, the difference between winning and profiting often confuses developing players. A bad call may succeed in one instance, but remains negative EV if repeated. A disciplined fold may lose a single pot, but preserves long-term edge. Professionals measure over lifetime, not moment. Variance creates illusion. Negative EV bluffs occasionally succeed, convincing players to repeat them until loss averages dominate. Professionals accept variance as surface noise. The signal always belongs to expectation. Positive EV does not guarantee immediate gain, nor does negative EV ensure instant loss. The lesson is patience. Over thousands of repetitions, math smooths emotion. This trust in process defines professionalism. Each hand becomes investment. Some returns arrive now, others compound quietly across sessions. Professionals never chase short-term validation, they seek consistent decision quality. Understanding positive versus negative EV restores order to variance. You learn that discipline, not fortune, governs profit. The calm player no longer celebrates results, they celebrate logic fulfilled. Chapter 5: Equity and Realization. Equity measures your share of the pot, if all cards were revealed and the hand ran to showdown. Realization measures how much of that equity you actually capture through play. Professionals focus not only on what percentage they own in theory, but on how well their position, skill, and line allow that equity to materialize. Equity represents potential. Realization reflects execution. A weak player holding 50% equity may realize far less if poor decisions prevent them from reaching showdown. A disciplined professional, even with inferior equity, can realize more by leveraging position and timing. Position defines realization most clearly. In position, you act last, converting theoretical value into real profit by controlling pot size and extracting folds. Out of position, you surrender control, allowing opponents to manipulate the tree. Professionals compensate by adjusting frequency, betting more often to deny realization, or tightening ranges to protect expected value. Board texture also influences equity realization. On static flops like A7-2 Rainbow, ranges stay stable and hands realize evenly. On dynamic boards 10-9-8 with two suits, equity shifts rapidly. Professionals understand which hands retain flexibility across runouts and which lose value quickly. Their strategy protects realization by minimizing exposure. Mathematically, realization connects to expected value through fold equity and future potential. Even if a hand begins behind, fold equity and positional advantage can push total EV positive. Professionals weigh these factors fluidly, blending probability with structure. Emotionally, equity realization teaches patience. Not every percentage becomes profit immediately. Strong hands sometimes fold before full value emerges. Weak hands occasionally win beyond expectation. Professionals detach from short-term distortion, trusting that correct frequencies restore equilibrium. Equity realization defines why theory cannot exist without execution. You do not win because your hand deserves it. You win because your structure allows it. The professional converts potential into outcome through calm logic and disciplined rhythm. Chapter 6. Pot odds and required equity. Pot odds define the price of participation. They express how much you must invest compared to the total pot to continue profitably. Required equity converts that price into mathematical threshold, the minimum chance of winning needed to make a call or raise profitable in the long run. The calculation is simple. Divide the cost of your call by the total pot after calling. If you must call 20 to win 100, your pot odds are 1 to 5, or 16.7%. You must win more often than that to maintain positive EV. Professionals internalize these calculations until they feel instinctive. Pot odds anchor decision-making amid uncertainty. They transform emotion into ratio. When facing a bet, professionals do not ask whether they feel strong enough. They ask whether probability supports the price. This objectivity separates logic from fear. Required equity integrates seamlessly with range thinking. You rarely know exact winning percentage, but can approximate it. Draws, pair plus draw combinations, or overcards each carry known equity bands. Comparing these to pot odds reveals whether continuation is rational. Position and future potential modify calculations subtly. In position, you may realize more equity than raw odds suggest, allowing slightly looser calls. Out of position, realization drops, tightening thresholds. Professionals adapt instantly, blending math with context. Emotion distorts pot odds when players chase hope rather than ratio. They call too often on draws without sufficient equity, mistaking potential for probability. Professionals discipline themselves through process, no emotional exceptions, only structure. Pot odds also regulate bluffing. When betting, you invert the calculation. How often must your opponent fold for the bluff to break even? This symmetry unites defense and aggression under the same logic. Mathematically, pot odds represent fairness. They define what should happen over time. Emotionally, they provide stillness, a way to act confidently, even amid uncertainty. When every decision aligns with ratio, clarity replaces doubt. Chapter 7. Future Street Planning. Future street planning connects present decisions to future expectations. Professionals never treat streets as isolated. They view flop, turn, and river as linked stages of one continuous equation. Each action prepares for the next, ensuring consistency of frequency, range, and value realization. Planning begins before action. When considering a bet, professionals visualize future branches of the decision tree. If they continuation bet the flop, they already know which turn cards sustain aggression and which require retreat. This foresight prevents reactionary play and maintains structural coherence. Stack depth defines planning horizon. Deep stacks require longer projections. How many streets of betting can this line support? Shallow stacks shorten the sequence, focusing on immediate fold equity and showdown value. Professionals adapt planning scope naturally to stack-to-pot ratio, aligning aggression with structural capacity. Range awareness underpins these forecasts. Every check or bet reshapes future distribution. When you check a strong hand, you reserve it for later aggression. When you bet thin value, you cap range for later defense. Professionals plan frequency transitions deliberately, ensuring that future actions remain credible within previous logic. Mathematically, future planning maximizes expected value by preventing contradiction. Each street influences pot geometry, and consistency across streets compounds equity. Random decisions fracture EV, because branches no longer align. Professionals guard against this by maintaining logical symmetry through time. Emotion often disrupts planning. After losing a pot, many players narrow focus to the next hand only. Professionals reset perspective instantly, treating every decision as continuation of larger rhythm. Their calm composure restores the full tree view, even under fatigue. Planning future streets is the art of alignment. You think several moves ahead while acting one move at a time. The professional mind lives simultaneously in present logic and future proportion, structured, aware, and composed. Chapter 8: Decision Weighting and Frequency. Decision weighting determines how often each action occurs within a balanced strategy. Professionals do not choose a single line. They distribute probability across options according to expected value. Frequency transforms static theory into dynamic equilibrium, preventing predictability while maintaining structure. Every hand category receives weight. Some strong hands bet always, others check occasionally. Medium strength holdings mix frequencies, balancing range across textures. These ratios create credible distributions that opponents cannot easily exploit. Weighting stems from expected value comparison. When two actions, such as betting or checking, hold near equal EV, professionals randomize between them proportionally. This randomness is not chaos, but equilibrium enforcement. Each weighted decision sustains theoretical stability. Mathematically, frequency equalizes risk and reward. If bluffing too often loses value, reduce weight. If betting value too rarely leaves money unclaimed, increase it. The ratio evolves naturally through observation and logic. Professionals refine these adjustments gradually, guided by feedback rather than emotion. Weighting also shapes image. Balanced frequencies make behavior unreadable. When strong hands and bluffs share similar timing and size, opponents face uncertainty. Consistency through proportion projects, confidence without exposure. Psychologically, decision weighting builds rhythm. The professional brain organizes probability like music, notes arranged by frequency and tone. Each decision follows internal cadence, replacing doubt with flow. Emotion threatens weighting integrity. Overconfidence expands aggression frequency. Fear contracts it. Professionals recognize imbalance early and restore ratio calmly before exposure grows. Equilibrium is maintained, not by perfection, but by correction. Frequency unites theory and instinct. It converts probability into behavior, blending math with rhythm. When each decision carries correct weight, your play sounds harmonious, measured, balanced, and unreadable. Chapter 9: Expected Value in Bluffing. Bluffing is not emotion, it is arithmetic. Professionals calculate bluff profitability through expected value, balancing fold frequency, risk, and reward. The purpose of bluffing is not to deceive but to maintain ratio, ensuring opponents cannot overfold without consequence. Expected value in bluffing depends on two numbers: bet size and required fold percentage. The formula is simple. Divide your bet by the total pot after betting to find how often the bluff must succeed to break even. For example, Betting half the pot requires opponents to fold 1/3 of the time. Betting the full pot requires them to fold half. Professionals estimate these values instantly, then compare them to population tendencies. If opponents fold more often than required, the bluff is profitable. If they defend more, the EV turns negative. The process becomes logic, not emotion. Balance remains essential. Bluff too rarely, and opponents overfold. Bluff too often, and they overcall. Professionals sustain equilibrium by matching bluff frequency to value ratio, typically near 1:2 at half pot sizing, and 1:1 at full pot. These proportions protect predictability across volume. Position and texture refine profitability. On dry boards, fold equity dominates. On coordinated textures, realization potential adds value to semi-bluffs. Professionals evaluate not just immediate success, but future possibility. How many cards improve or weaken the story? Emotion threatens this balance. Fear prevents logical bluffing. Frustration fuels over-aggression. Professionals neutralize emotion through consistency. They bluff not to win now, but to remain balanced forever. Mathematically, bluffing is a neutral instrument. Over time, its profit equals precision. The goal is not perfection, but proportion, each bluff integrated within total range logic. When executed with calm awareness, bluffing ceases to feel risky. It becomes routine mathematics disguised as courage, played with still hands and measured breath. Chapter 10: Value Extraction and Thresholds. Value extraction defines professional precision. It is the process of identifying when betting for profit remains mathematically sound, and when thin value crosses into negative expectation. Professionals operate near this boundary constantly, balancing greed against discipline. Every value bet targets worse hands that can call. The threshold occurs where that range narrows too far. Professionals recognize this inflection point intuitively through pattern memory. How opponents respond to sizing, texture, and rhythm. Mathematically, thin value betting remains positive, as long as expected calls outweigh losses to superior holdings. Each bet carries its own EV curve, and professionals visualize where it peaks. Betting beyond that point converts value into self-trap. Sizing determines threshold sensitivity. Smaller bets expand profitable range, because weaker hands can call. Larger bets isolate strength, but risk losing medium value targets. Professionals calibrate size to environment, seeking the intersection between maximum call rate and controlled risk. Psychologically, thin value requires composure. Fear of being raised causes hesitation. Greed for marginal profit causes overextension. Professionals stay neutral, treating value like frequency, an equation, not emotion. Position enhances precision. In position, you gather information before acting, refining thresholds accurately. Out of position, uncertainty widens, error margin, encouraging restraint. Professionals adapt aggression proportionally to clarity of information. Balance preserves credibility. To extract value consistently, your range must include enough bluffs to keep opponents curious. Pure value aggression becomes transparent. Integrated range keeps them calling wider, sustaining profitability. Value extraction reveals the difference between confidence and control. Amateurs bet because they want to win. Professionals bet because ratio dictates. Each decision sits exactly where mathematics, psychology, and rhythm converge. Quiet, deliberate, and efficient. Chapter 11: Combining Math and Intuition. Mathematics provides structure, intuition provides speed. Together they create balance, the ability to make disciplined decisions under pressure, without paralysis. Professionals integrate both seamlessly, allowing logic to inform instinct, and instinct to confirm logic. Mathematics defines the foundation. Pot odds, equity, and expected value form objective standards for every action. These calculations clarify thresholds, when to call, when to fold, and when to bluff. But mathematics alone cannot capture uncertainty. Poker contains incomplete information, emotional influence, and evolving rhythm. This is where intuition fills the gaps. Intuition develops through repetition. After thousands of hands, the brain recognizes patterns unconsciously: timing, bet sizing, and texture interactions. Professionals trust this stored data while verifying it against math. When both align, confidence becomes rational. The relationship is symbiotic. Intuition sparks awareness, mathematics validates it. If intuition signals strength in an opponent's line, math measures whether folding is justified. If logic supports a bluff, intuition refines timing. The two never compete, they harmonize into proportion. Emotion can distort this balance. Overconfidence inflates instinct, silencing logic. Excess calculation slows reaction, silencing rhythm. Professionals avoid both extremes, maintaining awareness of internal tempo. Their process feels calm, deliberate but fluid. Mathematically informed intuition also protects against fatigue. When decision trees grow large, memory of past calculation guides instant judgment. This efficiency preserves clarity during long sessions where mental precision fades. Trusting intuition requires discipline. Professionals review every instinctual decision later, confirming accuracy through data. Over time, correct feedback strengthens subconscious calibration. Combining math and intuition turns analysis into rhythm. You think less, yet decide better, guided by proportions that merge reason with feel. It is not guessing, it is remembering logic so deeply that it sounds like instinct. Chapter 12: Risk versus Reward Ratios. Risk and reward define the geometry of poker. Every action tilts between danger and potential gain. Professionals measure this balance constantly, treating it as dynamic equation rather than emotional gamble. The risk-to-reward ratio compares what you stand to gain versus what you risk losing. A half-pot bet risks 1 to win 2. A full-pot bet risks 1 to win 1. The higher the potential reward relative to risk, the less often success must occur to remain profitable. Professionals internalize these proportions until calculation feels intuitive. This ratio shapes every decision: bluff frequency, value sizing, and defense threshold. If risk grows faster than potential reward, aggression must decline. If reward expands, aggression becomes justified. The math ensures sustainability, preventing emotional overreach. Stack depth amplifies these dynamics. Deep stacks magnify both opportunity and variance. Short stacks reduce flexibility but clarify risk. Professionals adjust accordingly, matching volatility tolerance to environment. Risk also exists psychologically. The fear of loss alters ratio perception, making neutral decisions feel dangerous. Professionals neutralize this bias by reframing risk as cost of participation. Chips are tools, not possessions. The ratio becomes mechanic, not emotional. Reward extends beyond immediate chips. A successful bluff may reinforce table image or shift momentum, adding secondary EV. Professionals consider these intangible returns, alongside numeric profit, balancing long-term influence with short-term expectation. Mathematically, equilibrium between risk and reward maintains balance across sessions. Emotionally, it preserves calm. The professional no longer hopes for outcomes. They measure tolerance, applying proportion with patience. Mastery is not avoiding risk, but calibrating it. Every bet carries danger. Every fold carries opportunity cost. Professionals stay poised between them, choosing lines that reflect clarity, not courage. In poker's geometry, risk and reward are opposite sides of equilibrium. When measured correctly, they align perfectly, creating motion without chaos, balance without fear. Chapter 13. Reverse Engineering EV Mistakes. Reverse engineering mistakes means tracing negative outcomes back through the decision tree to identify where expectation was lost. Professionals analyze not whether a hand won or lost, but where logic diverged from structure. This process converts failure into clarity, ensuring future balance. Every mistake leaves a fingerprint in frequency. Perhaps you called too light against aggression, overbluffed into capped ranges, or failed to protect equity when position demanded it. Professionals reconstruct these moments by replaying the sequence in reverse. River to turn, turn to flop, flop to pre-flop, asking at each branch whether the action aligned with expected value. The key is separation between variance and error. Losing a large pot does not always indicate a mistake. Winning one does not always prove correctness. Professionals isolate logic from result. They ask, was this decision positive EV, given information available at the time? If yes, the outcome becomes irrelevant. Mathematically, reverse engineering begins with pot geometry. Each bet changes the ratio of risk to reward and narrows possible branches. By reviewing these proportions post-hand, you reveal how small miscalculations compound across streets. A single flawed sizing or mistimed aggression can erode entire lines of expectation. Emotion interferes with this process. Regret tempts bias, either excessive self-blame or defensive justification. Professionals remain neutral, treating review as analysis, not judgment. Mistakes become data points, not identity. Documentation strengthens clarity. Writing hand histories and labeling EV inflection points builds habit recognition. Over time, patterns emerge. Recurring errors in overcalling, underbluffing, or misjudging range interaction. Awareness turns weakness into structure. Reverse engineering is discipline disguised as curiosity. You trace logic backward not to relive failure, but to reconnect cause and effect. When understood fully, every mistake becomes instruction. Proof that progress comes through structure, not emotion. Chapter 14. Simplifying complex calculations. Poker contains too many variables for perfect calculation. Professionals simplify complex math into usable frameworks, converting theory into rhythm. They understand that clarity, not precision, sustains composure under pressure. Simplification begins with approximation. Instead of solving exact percentages, professionals rely on ratio bands. A flush draw has roughly 35% equity. A gut shot has about 10. Pot odds thresholds translate into rough memory points. Call when required equity is lower than your draw's estimate. This functional math preserves accuracy without delay. Street-by-street complexity also requires condensation. Professionals group board textures into categories: dry, dynamic, polarized, each carrying standard frequency adjustments. One clear rule replaces dozens of equations. Simplification creates flow. Expected value itself benefits from intuitive shorthand. Professionals think in relative terms: high, neutral, or low EV. If an action consistently underperforms or overperforms expectation, its ratio adjusts automatically. Over time, instinct mirrors mathematics. Emotion resists simplification because the ego seeks control through detail. Professionals overcome this by trusting structure. Simplicity does not mean ignorance. It means focusing only on variables that matter. You measure accuracy by clarity, not by complexity. Visualization supports efficiency. Professionals internalize pot odds, equity, and frequency visually rather than numerically. The brain recalls shapes faster than numbers, converting logic into image. Simplification also enhances endurance. Long sessions exhaust analytical precision. Approximation maintains function when fatigue arrives. Professionals recognize when mental bandwidth drops and rely on pre-trained heuristics to sustain consistency. Mathematically, simplification reduces variance in error. Emotionally, it preserves rhythm. Together they maintain decision quality, even in chaos. The professional's strength lies not in memorizing formulas, but in filtering them. Simplification transforms the infinite into the manageable, keeping logic fluid while focus remains calm. Chapter 15: Cumulative EV over Volume. Poker rewards consistency over brilliance. Cumulative expected value, or long-term EV, represents the sum of every correct decision made across thousands of hands. Professionals understand that profit emerges not from isolated moments, but from sustained process, small positive actions repeated quietly over time. Each hand contributes a fraction of expectation. A single correct fold may save less than one blind. A disciplined bluff may gain only slightly more. Yet across volume, these small differences compound. The professional mind views every hand as micro-investment in an ongoing curve, never as isolated event. Variance distorts perception. Short-term outcomes may rise above or fall below expectation, creating emotional turbulence. Professionals smooth these fluctuations through awareness. They track results analytically, but measure success through process metrics: EV, frequency accuracy, and discipline adherence. Mathematically, cumulative EV forms stability line. Even when bankroll fluctuates, EV converges toward its theoretical slope. Professionals trust this progression like gravity, slow, steady, and immune to variance. They act calmly because long-term structure guarantees return. Emotionally, this focus on volume replaces anxiety with rhythm. Each decision becomes one of many, diluting pressure from individual outcomes. Professionals think statistically, understanding that losing sessions exist within profitable systems. Cumulative EV also reinforces discipline. When tempted to deviate impulsively, professionals recall how negative EV actions, even small ones, compound downward just as efficiently as positive ones rise. Each deviation disrupts structure and delays convergence. Patience transforms math into mindset. You no longer chase big wins, you collect small ones. Consistency becomes confidence, and the line of cumulative expectation rises slowly but inevitably. Poker mastery lives in that line. Each calm decision extends it, and every emotional reaction flattens it. Professionals protect slope through awareness, letting structure outlast chaos. Chapter 16. Variance and Short-Term Noise. Variance is the turbulence around expectation. It is randomness, luck, and distribution error expressed through time. Professionals respect it, but never fear it. They know variance cannot change mathematics, only the timing of its revelation. Every hand carries variance potential. A positive EV decision may lose repeatedly. A negative EV mistake may win briefly. This fluctuation deceives the emotional mind, tempting reaction and overcorrection. Professionals counter by detaching entirely, evaluating only whether the action aligned with logic. Mathematically, variance equals standard deviation, the distance between short-term outcome and long-term mean. Over enough volume, this distance shrinks. Professionals track expected value separately from results, allowing clarity even in losing periods. Variance also measures risk exposure. High volatility strategies, such as frequent bluffing or large bet sizing, increase deviation though not necessarily EV. Professionals balance aggression with tolerance, adjusting playstyle to personal psychological resilience. Emotionally, variance tests composure. It invites tilt, frustration, and overconfidence. The calm player resists by anchoring in frequency. When results swing, they maintain exact rhythm, same bet sizing, same timing, same structure. Stillness restores order. Understanding variance builds empathy. Every opponent experiences it equally. Luck favors none permanently. Professionals avoid arrogance during hot streaks and despair during downswings. They observe both phases as statistical necessity, not moral judgment. Variance is noise surrounding truth. You cannot silence it, but you can outlast it. Each correct decision narrows deviation's power until only expectation remains visible. The professional views variance, like weather, temporary, unpredictable, and irrelevant to architecture. The structure stands regardless. In that patience lies mastery, calm, consistent play that lets math reveal itself over time. Chapter 17. Decision Trees in Multiway Pots. Multiway pots multiply complexity. Each additional player increases the number of possible branches in the decision tree, forcing professionals to simplify logic without losing precision. The goal becomes balance through caution, preserving expected value while minimizing exposure to overlapping ranges. In heads-up play, you measure frequency directly against one opponent. Multiway, those same frequencies collapse. Bluffing success requires all opponents to fold simultaneously, reducing fold equity sharply. Professionals adjust by narrowing bluff range, emphasizing equity realization and value protection instead of aggression. Mathematically, each decision now contains more conditional outcomes. The probability of improvement or fold success changes with every additional participant. Professionals estimate these shifts instinctively, focusing on proportional safety rather than speculative upside. Position grows even more critical. Acting last provides access to composite information, how each opponent reacts before you commit. Out of position, you act blind to future branches, risking domination from both sides. Professionals respond by checking more often, protecting equity through restraint. Bet sizing changes as well. Multiway pots reward smaller bets. Reduced fold equity lowers the value of large bluffs, while shared equity makes thin value extraction riskier. Smaller sizes maintain pot control and invite mistakes from unbalanced opponents. Emotionally, Multiway play demands patience. The presence of multiple ranges increases uncertainty, tempting reactionary moves. Professionals remain detached, accepting limited control. They focus on avoiding error, rather than forcing advantage. Multiway equilibrium feels quieter than heads-up balance. Professionals shift rhythm toward observation, letting opponents collide within complexity. Their advantage arises not from dominance but from composure, the discipline to stay steady while chaos multiplies. Chapter 18. Modeling Opponent Behavior. Modeling opponent behavior transforms observation into simulation. Professionals build mental representations of how specific players act across situations, frequency maps that predict future actions based on past evidence. This modeling allows faster, more accurate decision-making without reliance on guesswork. The model begins with categorization. Each opponent falls into structural types: aggressive, passive, balanced, or reactive. These archetypes define baseline tendencies. From there, professionals add detail: bet sizing habits, timing patterns, emotional stability, and reaction to pressure. Mathematically, modeling simplifies decision trees. Instead of analyzing every theoretical possibility, you reduce the tree to probable branches consistent with the model. This compression saves cognitive energy while maintaining accuracy. Models evolve continuously. Professionals update them with every revealed hand, noting contradictions and confirming patterns. When new behavior diverges from expectation, the model adjusts immediately. Flexibility prevents bias and keeps adaptation relevant. The process requires humility. Overconfidence in models causes blind spots. Professionals remain aware that no representation is perfect. Probability always includes noise. They use models as guides, not guarantees. Psychologically, modeling requires emotional neutrality. Bias distorts observation, causing players to see what they expect instead of what occurs. Professionals stay still internally, observing without judgment. Accuracy thrives in calm awareness. Technology enhances this process online. Databases, HUD statistics, and solver comparisons refine models through quantitative confirmation. Yet professionals still rely on instinct to interpret rhythm beyond numbers. Modeling opponent behavior turns poker into psychology through logic. You are not predicting emotion, you are forecasting pattern. Each decision becomes intersection of mathematics and empathy, where understanding guides structure. When models align with reality, decision-making feels effortless. You act not in reaction but in harmony with probability, flowing calmly through patterns you already anticipated. Chapter 19. The Role of Equity Denial. Equity denial is the act of reducing an opponent's ability to realize their potential share of the pot. Professionals use this principle to create hidden profit, not by winning more showdowns, but by preventing others from reaching them. Every small denial compounds over time, quietly raising expected value. The concept begins with vulnerability. When opponents hold drawing hands or marginal equity, they rely on future cards to catch up. Betting forces them to pay to continue, or fold prematurely. Each fold denies realization and transfers equity directly to you. Professionals calculate these exchanges subconsciously, viewing bets as tools of control rather than aggression. Equity denial differs from pure bluffing. The goal is not to make opponents fold strong holdings, but to limit free realization from weak ones. Even a small bet can generate large EV when it blocks cheap access to future cards. Professionals apply this principle frequently on draw-heavy textures, where passive lines concede too much probability. Mathematically, equity denial connects to fold equity and pot geometry. Small, frequent bets accumulate protection by pushing low-equity hands out early, preserving structural advantage for future streets. These actions reduce variance while increasing long-term EV. Position amplifies this effect. In position, professionals choose denial spots precisely, adjusting size to manipulate pot growth while maintaining flexibility. Out of position, they deny equity preemptively to offset informational disadvantage. Emotionally, equity denial requires patience. The profit feels invisible because pots often end without showdown. Professionals remain unfazed by modest returns, understanding that small, consistent denials build stability through repetition. The art of equity denial lies in subtlety. You are not dominating the hand, you are quietly shaping its probability. Every denied card, every folded draw, every protected pot contributes to the silent architecture of long-term advantage. Chapter 20: EV across bet. Sizing strategies. Bet sizing defines the structure of expected value. Each size alters risk, reward, and frequency balance. Professionals treat sizing not as instinct but as calculation, tailoring each bet to texture, range composition, and opponent behavior. Smaller bets target range-wide pressure. They allow bluffs and thin value to coexist efficiently by offering favorable risk-to-reward ratios. Half-pot bets, for instance, require only 1/3 fold equity to remain profitable, encouraging frequent aggression. Professionals use this sizing on dry boards, where both players hold moderate equity. Medium bets, around 2/3 to 3/4 pot, balance protection and leverage. They extract more from value hands, while maintaining credible bluff representation. Professionals choose these sizes when polarization begins, but board texture still allows contest. Large bets polarize entirely. They represent either strong value or pure air, forcing opponents into binary decisions. The higher risk increases variance, but maximizes potential EV when fold frequency or call bias aligns correctly. Professionals deploy large bets sparingly, ensuring range integrity through proper value-to-bluff ratios. Mathematically, each size defines its own equilibrium. A 1/3 pot bet requires opponents to defend 75% of hands to avoid exploitation. A full pot bet reduces that to 50%. Professionals know these thresholds instinctively, adjusting sizing according to population tendencies and perceived elasticity. Psychologically, sizing influences perception. Repetition of identical sizes breeds predictability. Variation within structure conceals intent. Professionals alternate rhythms subtly. Same logic, different tone. Emotionally, disciplined sizing replaces impulse. Overconfidence inflates bets beyond logic. Fear shrinks them below efficiency. Professionals remain centered, viewing size as mathematical language rather than emotional expression. EV lives inside these sizes. Choosing correctly transforms balance into precision, turning risk into design. Each bet becomes statement of ratio, neither too small nor too large, only exact. Chapter 21: The mental process of calculation. The mental process of calculation transforms theory into real-time execution. Professionals maintain calm awareness while computing probabilities, ratios, and outcomes under pressure. They do not perform long arithmetic mid-hand. They follow structured sequences that reduce chaos into rhythm. Calculation begins with simplification. Professionals estimate rather than solve. Pot odds, fold equity, and equity realization all follow memorized frameworks, benchmarks built through repetition. When facing a bet, they instantly assess ratio bands rather than numbers. This speed preserves composure and prevents paralysis. Focus defines precision. The brain cannot process complex formulas while emotions run high. Professionals slow internal tempo intentionally. Before acting, they pause, not to calculate longer, but to think clearly. This micro-moment restores rhythm, ensuring every computation aligns with proportion rather than impulse. Mathematically, calculation follows 3 steps: identify inputs, measure proportion, decide action. Inputs include pot size, bet size, and perceived ranges. Proportion compares risk to reward. Decision chooses line that maximizes expected value within tolerance of error. The method remains identical, regardless of hand strength. Emotion often disrupts this process. Anxiety narrows perception. Excitement accelerates pacing. Both distort logic. Professionals counter by controlling breathing and focus, using physical stillness to regulate thought flow. The body's rhythm synchronizes with calculation tempo. Visualization aids consistency. Many professionals imagine ratios visually, pie charts of equity, or proportional chips in pot, translating numbers into image. This intuitive mapping transforms abstract math into tangible structure. Calculation ends not with certainty, but with confidence in process. Professionals act, knowing that logic outweighs outcome. Even when results differ, they trust structure. Over time, this trust solidifies into instinct. The mental process of calculation proves that composure is not emotionless, it is directed awareness. You think slower to play faster, processing complexity with clarity born from repetition and calm. Chapter 22: Data, Solvers, and Real-Time Study. Modern tools have reshaped understanding of expected value. Data tracking and solver analysis allow professionals to test assumptions, verify frequencies, and refine equilibrium models. Yet the tools themselves are not the skill. It is the interpretation that matters. Data represents memory. Every recorded hand adds to a growing database of tendencies. Professionals review this information regularly, identifying leaks invisible during play, fold rates, bluff frequencies, and sizing patterns. Over time, data transforms intuition into verified structure. Solvers extend this logic further. They simulate perfect equilibrium, revealing optimal frequencies for every position and texture. Professionals use them not to memorize but to understand relationships, how ranges interact, how small changes ripple through the tree. The purpose is principle, not mimicry. Real-time study connects data to intuition. Between sessions, professionals test scenarios. During play, they reference memory of prior simulations. This feedback loop strengthens instinctual awareness, turning study into live performance. However, technology invites over-reliance. Blindly copying solver output ignores context. Real opponents play imperfectly and live variables. Emotion, fatigue, stack depth cannot be coded. Professionals balance reference with flexibility, blending precision with adaptation. Mathematically, data and solvers refine boundaries. Emotionally, they build confidence. Knowing your baseline allows freedom within it. Professionals act fluidly, Because they trust structure, validated through study. Real-time learning sustains longevity. Each session becomes experiment. Each review becomes refinement. The professional never stops calibrating expectation. Tools provide light, but discipline directs it. Data illuminates trends. Solvers define symmetry. Awareness applies both calmly. True mastery lies not in owning information, but in harmonizing with it, turning technology into rhythm, not dependence. Chapter 23. Psychological Bias in EV Estimation. Psychological bias distorts expected value. Even skilled players misjudge probabilities when emotion, fatigue, or ego interferes. Professionals identify these distortions early, applying logic as correction. Mastery begins when you recognize that miscalculation often arises not from numbers, but from mind. The first bias is outcome attachment. Players equate success with correctness, reinforcing bad habits through short-term luck. Winning a negative EV hand feels validating. Losing a positive EV decision feels wrong. Professionals separate logic from result, focusing on process evaluation. Recency bias follows. Recent wins inflate confidence. Recent losses induce fear. Both skew risk assessment. Professionals counter this by referencing historical averages, reminding themselves that variance, not fortune, dictates streaks. Ego bias appears subtly. Players overestimate control, assuming their reads or strategies outperform mathematics. They call too light to see, or bluff to prove dominance. Professionals suppress ego through humility, trusting structure over emotion. Confirmation bias reinforces comfort. Players notice evidence supporting their belief while ignoring contradiction. Professionals train against this through structured review, analyzing losing lines and questioning assumptions before reaffirming strategy. Mathematically, bias introduces systematic EV loss. Each distorted decision shifts frequency from equilibrium, turning neutral spots into leaks. Over time, these small deviations accumulate silently. Professionals protect against drift through regular feedback, data analysis, hand review, and meditation on rhythm. Emotionally, awareness heals distortion. Recognizing bias reduces its power. Professionals accept humanity and logic, understanding that discipline means guiding emotion, not erasing it. Poker is mirror of cognition. Bias reflects unexamined thought. Awareness restores proportion. The calm player sees both truth and error clearly, adjusting until clarity replaces confidence. In that balance, EV estimation becomes not just math, but mindfulness in motion. Chapter 24. Expected Value as a System. Expected value does not live in single hands. It exists as continuous system. Every decision contributes to long-term pattern, connecting mathematics, psychology, and discipline into unified structure. Professionals treat EV not as number, but as rhythm that defines entire career. The system functions through repetition. Each hand tests alignment between theory and execution. Correct frequencies maintain flow. Emotional deviations disrupt it. Over time, equilibrium emerges naturally through disciplined action. Within this system, profit becomes byproduct, not goal. Professionals focus on decision quality, knowing that expectation compounds automatically. Variance influences short-term outcomes, but EV remains constant beneath noise, quiet, steady, and cumulative. Mathematically, the EV system resembles closed loop. Input is structure, process is decision, output is result. When input remains consistent, the system self-corrects after deviations. Mistakes serve as recalibration points rather than collapse triggers. Emotionally, EV as system teaches patience. You cannot control distribution, only process. Professionals detach from performance anxiety by trusting system integrity. Each session becomes part of larger continuum. No hand too large, no loss too final. EV also extends beyond chips. Discipline in decision-making strengthens composure, which in turn reinforces accuracy. The system nourishes itself. Every balanced act fuels the next. Professionals occasionally audit the system through reflection, checking whether logic, study, and emotion remain synchronized. These moments of still evaluation sustain longevity. Expected value, a system transforms poker from contest into practice. It is meditation on proportion, where clarity replaces impulse and process replaces chaos. The professional no longer plays for luck, they play for alignment. When viewed as system, EV becomes more than mathematics. It becomes philosophy. Balance, repetition, and awareness merge into quiet confidence. In that calm, the numbers finally make sense. Chapter 25. Decision Mastery as Discipline. Decision mastery is not brilliance, it is repetition under control. Professionals achieve consistency by structuring their thought process until accuracy becomes habit. Discipline transforms theory into reflex, ensuring that even under fatigue or pressure, logic governs every choice. The process begins with structure. Each decision follows the same rhythm. Assess information, calculate proportion, act with composure. This sequence repeats until it becomes subconscious. The professional no longer forces calculation, they flow through it. Repetition turns deliberate analysis into instinctive precision. Discipline also means restraint. Not every situation demands creativity. Most require adherence to fundamentals, correct frequencies, balanced ranges, and measured risk. Professionals avoid the impulse to outplay when equilibrium already provides profit. Control protects expectation. Emotional stability supports structure. Fear of error leads to hesitation. Desire for redemption fuels chaos. Professionals neutralize both extremes through calm awareness. They act with full attention, then release attachment to outcome immediately. This mental posture preserves rhythm across sessions. Review reinforces mastery. Every decision becomes data, every mistake feedback. Professionals analyze patterns of imbalance, too much aggression, insufficient defense, and recalibrate proportion through study. Each correction adds precision, reducing variance caused by emotion. Mathematically, discipline minimizes error accumulation. Emotionally, it transforms anxiety into rhythm. Over time, small consistent edges merge into steady advantage. Decision mastery feels quiet. There is no rush, no performance, only presence. Each action flows naturally from logic, anchored in calm repetition. Professionals achieve peace through process, proving that consistency, not inspiration, defines greatness. Chapter 26. Lesson Recap. Decision trees and expected value form the skeleton of professional reasoning. They convert instinct into structure, guiding every choice through proportion and patience. This lesson has shown how clarity, mathematics, and calm awareness merge into a unified decision process. You began by visualizing poker as branching structure, a living system of options where every bet, call, or fold connects logically to the next. You learn to map sequences, define expected value, and distinguish positive from negative EV. You explored how equity, pot odds, and planning align across streets to sustain coherence. You studied decision weighting, bluff EV, and value thresholds, understanding how ratios maintain balance. You learned to merge math with intuition, manage risk and reward, and simplify complexity through efficient reasoning. Each concept built toward clarity under motion. Later chapters expanded perspective, cumulative EV, variance, opponent modeling, and psychological bias. You discovered how decisions form systems, how data reinforces intuition, and how balance restores stability through time. Finally, you saw that mastery lies not in certainty, but in rhythm. Professionals act within structure, trust proportion, and remain still when results fluctuate. Their calm replaces hope with process, and emotion with pattern. Expected value mastery means thinking clearly when others react. It is seeing logic beneath noise and structure within chaos. Each hand becomes one branch in lifelong decision tree, measured, deliberate, and perfectly balanced. Lesson 18 closes with this principle: discipline is destiny. The professional who thinks with structure, acts with composure, and repeats with patience controls variance itself. Within that control lies freedom, the quiet perfection of decision mastery.